Started when I was a kid. My favorite thing to do. I think the thing I'm most grateful for in my life is that, every day I get up and I do exactly what I love to do. And, I think the majority of the people that are, have an interest, have a hobby, it's an after work and enterprise, it can't be parlayed into a career. And yeah, I don't know. I feel really fortunate about it, but also on some level, I'm not really surprised by it, because it was always my passion. It was always what I felt like I would do.
If you follow your passion and do it because it's a passion, you're going to be successful.
100%.
Everybody else I've run into are trying to be famous or trying to be successful. If you just have passion.
Exactly. Yeah, if it's the way you're expressing your passion in the universe. Someone told me that said if you have something to give the universe will beat a path to your door, and I really believe that. It's like, I'm a freelancer and I've been freelance for about 25 years, and people ask me all the time, like, oh my God, how can you live like that? You have no idea what you're doing next month. Don't you want some kind of steady job, this or that? And about 20 years ago, I made peace with it. I believe in the process. I put myself out there, and I feel like every time I do a job, I'm really respectful and reverent of the fact that the client's trusting me, they're investing their money in me, and I knock it out of the park every time.
You do. Dan Winters, stay there. We're going to break. Back in just a few minutes. We'll show you some more of his photography. Well, one of the top photographers in the world, I've looked him up. Some say the top photographer in the world. There's no one more prolific, and we're honored to have him. We're going to be scrolling through some of the politicians, movie stars, you name it, religious leaders that he has photographed for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers, or you can go to danwintersphoto.com to see a lot more, because he has computers in his office, and I'd be seeing photos of Schwarzenegger and photos of Al Gore. They're all so unique and just almost like a lens, take the spirit of somebody and then magnify it. I think that's what Dan Winters does, and we're going to talk about how you're able to do that, or is it just a kind of an idiot savant? I'm not saying you're an idiot, but you know what I mean. Like I think of myself with political stuff sometimes. It's just you have that talent. But going back to the term conspiracy theorist, you're right. It's just a label they throw on people to say, oh, this information can't be looked at. This information, it's a way to downgrade it, when really just questioning the system is what any free human's supposed to do. Here's the Globe and Mail today. The dangerously unbalanced world of global governance. They're admitting world government's being established. It's run by the banks. But then they say you're a conspiracy theorist if you don't want to be a slave of banks.
Exactly. And there's, and I'm sure you've probably used the quote on your show, probably on more than one occasion, but there's that great quote by Goering from the Nuremberg trials that says, the normal people don't want war, but after all, it's not the normal people that are making the policy. It's the politicians that are making the policy, and it's very easy to bring the normal people along. All you have to do is convince them that they're being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism. It works every time. And that is so true. The whole idea of like questioning anything. Even the fact that, how contrived the term Patriot Act was, so it implies that if you resist it at all, that, oh man, you're not patriotic.
Or the New Freedom Initiative to put half of America's kids on psychotropic drugs. That's a new freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. What about talk locally, what about the police chief in Austin with the mandatory, if you refuse breathalyzer, the mandatory blood test.
Without even having warrants.
Where they take you to a hospital and they violate your physical body to get blood out of you.
And now they're training the cops to do it.
It's unbelievable to me that anybody would stand for that for 1 second. Clearly, historically, there's been policies that have been administered that have, it's taken a while to get rid of them because you have to go through the appellate courts and to the Supreme Court, and then suddenly it's deemed like unconstitutional. But in the meantime, people are being, and believe me, I think drunk driving is aberrant, and I would not participate in it at all. But the idea that you can actually take blood out of someone's body.
Well, they undermine the Bill of Rights and Constitution for a supposed greater good, but we know they're scientifically really just targeting the general population. It's like Homeland Security. We've gotten their internal documents. It's really all pointed at the American people.
Absolutely.
From the beginning.
Absolutely. I did a really interesting piece, and I wish I had actually given you the photograph, but I was hired by a magazine actually Esquire, and they were doing a piece on the FAA and the TSA people and the way they screen, and what the guy that was the head of the program within the FAA to test screening, and he was an ex-Navy SEAL, and his job, he had a small group of individuals, and their job was to breach airport security. And so what they would do is they'd look for patterns. They'd go into airport, they'd look for patterns. They'd do exactly what you would do if you were trying to breach airport security. You would educate yourself on what it was, on their methods, on their means, and then you would do it, right? So the whole idea of like the TSA screening and stuff, while I agree there should be some kind of, checks and balances for people getting on an airplane, it's such a Band-Aid. When we go on jobs, we carry on, $25,000 worth of cameras, and we carry them on, and it's a big case full of electronic equipment that no one in the TSA has any idea what they're looking at. And they'll open it up and they'll kind of look through it and they'll close it up. I mean, who knows what the hell those cameras.
Well, we know, and they've admitted, all this TSA, grabbing women's breasts, grabbing men's genitals, putting us through naked body scanners, is to train us to have our privacy violated.
Space violated.
Yes.
Exactly. So get back to that Esquire story. So the guy who's writing, or the guy that's being focused on, is the guy that's the head of this, sort of like rogue entity within the TSA/FAA, whose job is to violate or breach airport security. So, what they do is they look for patterns, and he came up with this whole method at Kennedy. He said, look, there's like 3 flights to the Middle East at like 4:00 in the afternoon out of Kennedy. And he said, we've watch very closely the way TSA goes through stuff, and they basically don't even look at anything. The stuff's going on. So he said that would be a prime target. So they make a bomb-looking device, they put it in a bag, and it gets through. So he was doing this. So my assignment from the magazine was, okay, what we need you to do is we need you to figure out how to take down an aircraft. So I said, okay. So once again, I go online. I spend maybe 6-7 hours researching it. I figure out what kind of explosive to make, how you can make it. It's not detectable by any of the carbon-based testing methods that the TSA uses.
Dan Winters, got a break. That was a short segment. Long segment coming up. Let's finish that story when we get back. Then we'll get into some of the more interesting things you've seen in your life traveling the world. Dan Winters is our guest. DanWintersPhoto.com. I'm Alex Jones.